When I got laid off at 57 years old, everyone, including myself, assumed that losing the job was the worst part. But the truth is, the job was already breaking me. I was already stressed out and burnt out from this job. Getting laid off wasn't the disaster I feared. It turned out to be the wake-up call I didn't know that I needed. And if you're Gen X or Gen X adjacent in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, there's a good chance you might be feeling some of this too. Let me walk you through what was really happening in my life and why that layoff ended up not just saving me, but revitalizing my own life. I realized I was burnt out. I just didn't realize how badly I was burnt out. I spent 20 years wearing many different hats building a software business unit from the ground up. I started out with 0 products and 0 clients and built it up over the 20 years to 430 site licenses, thousands of users, millions of transactions being processed through the software, and all organically without venture capital or equity coming in. So this all kind of laid on me, and I held a number of different roles within that organization. Over time, I was able to hire a couple people to help alleviate the stress, but the organization was never as many people as it should have been. And part of that was because the company realized I could do it, and they enjoyed the 50 to 70% profit margins that my business unit was throwing off. So it turned out, near the end, I was just trying to get through the day. We had been purchased by another company 3 years ago, and I knew the writing was on the wall that this business unit was not going to be invested in, and that became apparent right away. But all of a sudden, the joy and affirmation I got from building this business unit was gone. No one cared. The customers cared, so I worked on keeping them happy. My staff cared because they liked getting paychecks. As far as contributing toward the broader company, it was no longer a factor in this business unit. In fact, the goal really seemed to be to let this business unit attrit over time and write out the profits. The job itself became very comfortable over those 20 years. At first, it was fun and exciting, and I was learning lots of new things. But over time, and especially after the sale to the new company, it became apparent that I was just trying to tread water, keep things moving along for another day, keep the customers happy. And really, that's what GenX does, right? We handle everything. We solve the problems. We power through it. And that's how we were raised. It was like, you want to eat? Well, go figure out how to make something, even if it's just throwing your frozen burrito in the microwave. This was just normal GenX behavior on steroids. Basically, I was burning myself out because of who I was and how I was raised and the fact that this is what I did. I just went out and solved problems. I'm a problem solver by nature. So if you're exhausted but still showing up every day, stick around because you're not alone. So there's a comfort trap. And this is probably why people, especially Gen X, stays in their jobs too long. A lot of younger people, and especially us when we were younger, we probably moved around much more often. But at some point, you get used to your coworkers, you get used to the work, you know it all, it's all comfortable, you start to worry about at a certain age if you can find a new job, the money seems adequate, the retirement plan you've been building continues to be added to. So you kind of start losing your ambition. Sure, you want to still do things at work, but you're not really worried about, I'm going to go elsewhere and look. I'm going to go find a better job. I'm going to do something brand new that I've never done before. You lose that because so much of your identity is tied up in your current job. Additionally, we grew up at a time where we had economic uncertainty in the 70s and 80s and, even into the Great Recession. Also, many of our parents didn't make what people make today for their jobs. We didn't have all of the luxuries that today's kids have. So we felt that scarcity. And we didn't want to let go any financial achievements that we have gotten to in our life. We didn't want to risk it at this point. We became risk averse. Additionally, many of us are kind of sandwiched between supporting kids, whether they're younger kids or adult kids, and also our parents are starting to age and they're wanting to age in place, so they need additional support to keep doing what they're doing. So we just feel stuck, and we're stuck partially because we've gotten comfortable with being stuck. Comfort essentially is what trapped me. It was the handcuffs. It's what kept me stuck. And it might be keeping you stuck too. Now, Gen X didn't start out this way. We came in at the time when the digital age was coming about. We were the generation that drove the push from analog to digital. We were curious, we were ambitious, we wanted to learn new things. We wanted to take on those new projects. We wanted to go take on the world. And all of a sudden, here we are later in life, where we're losing our excitement for this. We've been there, done that. We've bought our music on LP and 8-track and cassette and CD and download, and now it's all streaming for a set amount per month. We've been through this over and over again. Additionally, with that loss of excitement and loss of ambition, you kind of start to lose your drive about life itself. So maybe you start stress eating to get through the day. I know I was. I know I had put on some weight those final years that was compounding the issue. I was stressed out. I was eating. It was making me heavier. I was continuing to eat because I was stressed out and it was making me heavier. It's not good for our health, even less so when you're in your 50s or 60s. So many of us keep doing what we're doing because we're losing ourselves in taking care of everyone else and everyone else's needs, whether that's our employer, our employees, our spouse, our family, our parents. All of that just becomes a cycle that keeps perpetuating and keeps draining us, and we're not really stepping back to take a look at it. We forget to ask what it is that we want and we need. What are we looking for as Gen X? So you can be alive, functional, employed, and still be totally lost. Sometimes as we're in this rut, it's hard to get out of it on your own. You need to be kicked out of the rut. You need to be pushed out of the rut. And that's really what happened to me. That's what the layoff was. It broke this cycle. I looked up, I took my head out of the ground and was able to look up and look around. When I got laid off, when I got the message about 4 weeks before my last day of work, I actually felt relieved. All this weight and burden, 20 years worth of knowledge and skills and being the go-to guy for what I did was no longer going to be my problem. I just had to spend 4 weeks transitioning 20 years worth of knowledge and code to the team that was going to basically babysit it as it had traded over time. It really was life-changing, but not in the negative way you think. And also, because we'd prepared for it, I was just kind of like, okay, that's fine. I think I shocked my boss because, again, he really didn't know me since he really just talked to me one-on-one for a maximum of 4 hours spread out over 3 years. So I think I shocked him. I think he was waiting for this to be more confrontational. And really, I knew there was nothing I could do about it, but I also knew I was in a good position to weather this. So I was kind of like, all right, what do I need to do? What's the plan? When's my last date? Let's go ahead and make this happen. At the same time, I now had the opportunity to look at what I was going to do next, to ask myself what I wanted to do, if I was going to retire, if I was going to seek other employment, if there were any hobbies I was going to do in the meantime while I was being severanced out and collecting unemployment. So I had a long runway to figure all this out. And I realized that this was a good thing because I really couldn't have kept going on as I'd been living. And the reality is I would have, had I have not been thrown out of the nest, I would have stayed there for years just because of the comfort and the paycheck and being used to the burnout and the stress. If this happens to you, keep in mind, Your story isn't over. It might actually just be beginning. Post layoff really became a season to take back my life, to look and see internally what it is that I was looking for that drives me, that excites me. It was time to breathe again, to exhale after holding my breath for years and just being exhausted and burnt out doing the same thing for so long. It was a time to rebuild and focus on energy, purpose, and mental clarity. I was trying to reconnect with family and my health. I had to figure out what was going to drive me going forward. If I no longer had work in my life, what are truly my passions? If I was going to pick up another job, was I going to do something like what I was doing where I did everything? Or was I going to focus more? And if I was going to focus more, what would that look like, right? What would those things be that I was going to focus on? And this gave me the space and the time for what really matters, to focus on what I need to be healthy so that I can be there for other people. So you're allowed to rest, you're allowed to reassess, and you don't need a crisis to make a change. That was the takeaway. Now, for me, the crisis precipitated the change, but hopefully for you, if you haven't been laid off yet, now's the time to start asking these questions and thinking about what's next, what are your backup plans, what are your passions, what are you going to do? In reassessing my life and looking at curiosity, where it went, why I was no longer curious, I started to dive into what should I do with all this free time? Because time is a gift. Time is the one resource we can never get back. And free time is the ultimate gift, being able to choose what you want to do versus being told what to do or being obligated to do. So having this newfound free time within my obligations, I was wondering, what do I do next? So I started out just doing some projects around the house, helping my youngest child with some of the issues he was going through at the time, and started to focus on, okay, this stuff's kind of boring and it's not fulfilling, right? The stuff around the house still needs to get done and it's busy work, but it's not really driving me. So I peeled back another layer and said, what do I really want to do? What skills do I want to still be able to leverage going forward? And you need to ask yourself kind of these same questions. How do you get your passion relit, your curiosity ignited? And for me, part of it drove me into this decision to do YouTube, because YouTube matches a lot of the stuff I was doing in my job for so many years. I spent a lot of time presenting and selling and objection handling and educating for software sales. And this is very similar. It has a performative nature, it has an educational nature, it has a technical and curiosity nature. So all the pieces that not only go into planning the YouTube video, putting it together, recording the YouTube video, editing it, posting it, cleaning it up, wondering why people are or aren't watching it, watching the metrics on it, all that really feeds my drive and ignites my passion to pursue more things in life. And for you, it's going to be something different. But the good news is, because you're Gen X and we went through all these technology shifts, we drove the world from analog to digital, from basically snail mail to email to CompuServe to AOL to internet. That was driven by Gen X in the workforce. So this reinvention is really in our DNA. It's part of who we are. So it's not too late to try something, not even close. So don't give up just yet. One of the other decisions I came to was that I'd look for a job that I liked. If I don't find one, then I'll just continue to move toward retirement. But if I do find one that leverages my skills, kind of like I'm doing with YouTube here, then that would be something I'd go do for a number of years. And especially if it's a remote job that I can take with me and not have to draw my retirement money, and it offered a decent amount of vacation where I could still travel in between, that would be fantastic. That would be the best case. But in finding this dream job, I first had to realize what it is I was looking for. And I narrowed it down to three major strengths. Those were technical sales, solution engineering, and client-facing storytelling. Being in that, being able to create success, leveraging those skills. I wanted to pick roles with companies and responsibilities that would energize me and not drain me, not burn me out, but build up who I was and what I was doing. Working remote gives me the best way to fit that into my lifestyle going forward and to balance it with family and retirement and other needs. So there may be non-traditional retirements for Gen X. And it may be that you're still working during your retirement, even though that's counterintuitive, but you're living the retirement lifestyle. You go live where you want to live. You go down to the nice weather. You travel during your vacation time, kind of intermingling both of these, work and retirement, to create kind of a new hybrid is not beyond the scope of what Generation X can do. So we still have decades of meaningful life and contribution ahead of us. It doesn't have to look like Act 1, where everything's scripted for us. We're going to school, we're growing up, being raised by our parents, told what to do, getting our first jobs. Or Act 2, where we have our jobs and we're building families and we're progressing in our careers. Act 3 is really up to us, Gen X, those of us in our 40s, 50s, and 60s, to write. We control the narrative. We control the script for the third act. The third act, this is where Gen X is now. This is where we're entering. If you're a young Gen Xer, you're getting there and you're going to be there before you know it. It's important to realize that the third act of life is more of a turning point, more of a pivot, not really a dead end. Layoffs, burnout, career shifts, they don't mean failure. They just mean it's time to change. They're invitations to a new phase of life, one that you can redesign with purpose and intentionality. Again, as I said, you get to write your third act and what it looks like. So even though you're older, you're not behind, you're not too old, and this next chapter might be the most meaningful yet. But you have to give yourselves permission to build it. You have to take ownership of it. You have to know it's yours. So stick around. We're building community here. Gen X can rethink retirement, career, money, and purpose. And if you want to be part of this community, please subscribe to the channel, Gen X Third Act. If you like this video, please click like. It helps it get distributed by YouTube to other people who may have these same interests and are watching this same kind of video. I appreciate the time you spent watching this, and as always, I appreciate you.